Good morning. It's good to see your faces out there today on this New England fall day. I am Reverend Ellen Quadgrass, serving in co-ministry here at South Church with Kirsten Hunter, our Director of Lifespan Ministry, and serving in shared ministry with all of you, which includes the shared ministry with our worship associates, one of whom faithfully joins Kirsten and myself up here every Sunday, and who sometimes get COVID. So in your order of service, it says Willow Young is your worship associate, but I want to thank Anna Howard for being willing to be here 2 weeks in a row to step up into that COVID-19 created opening. And I want to thank all of our worship associates for their crucial part in creating worship experiences that we offer here every Sunday. And I would like to welcome all of you to South Church this morning, whether you've been coming for decades or whether this is your very first time here. And if it is your first time, I want to offer a special welcome. I hope you'll stay for coffee after, and I hope I get to meet you. If you want more information, there are green cards in the pews, or if they are not in the pews, you can find me after, and I will hook you up with one. Today, we continue to explore October's theme, Gift of Heritage, about how our past and present play into the gifts and challenges. Today we'll be talking about how that heritage plays into the gifts and challenges that artificial intelligence offers us in these changing times. And today, as we have been doing every week, I invite us to acknowledge the original stewards of the land upon which this sanctuary sits, the Abenaki and Pennacook nations, who did not cede this territory, who are still here, whose heritage is a part of ours, and whose legacy of wisdom is part of our present. May their striving for justice be part of our own. I invite you to take a look at your order of service, which lists all the wonderful people involved in making our service happen today, both those visible and up front, and those behind the scenes who make worship possible week after week. Please note that after the children's story, there will be religious education downstairs. Please just follow Kirsten down the stairs after the time for all ages. And every one of you, in addition to those who are new, are invited to stay for fellowship, coffee and treats, and conversation downstairs. And my crucial question for you this week: pumpkin carving, fun fall activity with artful results, or untidy mess to be avoided at all costs? This is the question you can use as an excuse to talk to someone you do not know well. So I hope that you will. Please note that assisted listening devices and large print hymnals are available at the back of the sanctuary. Please ask an usher if you need assistance. Please silence your cell phone if you have one. It is now time for some announcements.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all this morning. Please read this. I'm going to give you some very brief little sort of titles of things to be aware of, but there is more detail right in your order of service. So one thing, tomorrow morning, people who have been coming to yoga at Court Street up the street where our offices are, there's no yoga classes tomorrow. Both the 6:30 and the 9 are canceled. But also, did you know there was yoga at Court Street? There is. You can find out about it on our website or in the order of service. Journey to membership classes. If you are new or old and considering joining the church. Journey to Membership classes are a great way to kind of dig a little more deeply into what it means to be a member of the South Church community, and they are happening in November. Also, the South Church Band is going to be playing next week. They're still looking for some participants, so if you want to get groovy for next week's service, please look that up. And finally, this coming Saturday, the 28th of October, is the fall garden cleanup here at church. It's a really great opportunity to meet some other South Church folks, get a little bit sweaty, and help clean up the garden around our beautiful sanctuary. So please keep that in mind. And the last thing I'll share is, if you happen to be new to our community, you may not know that we have an excellent viewing location for the Halloween parade. And our high school youth group used that also as an opportunity to host a bake sale fundraiser. So if you don't have plans yet for the parade, join us on the front lawn on the 31st. It starts at 7 o'clock, but you can get here early. We'll be here from about 6 o'clock on. Thanks so much. And I'm going to pass this on to Tom Barry, our chair of the ABC committee. And before I hand him the mic, can everyone please give a round of applause to Tom and the ABC committee?
Well, thank you. I am Tom Barry. I'm chair of this year's annual budget campaign. That is our process that we do every year to secure funding through our pledges to next year's operating budget. The target is $624,000. We are well on our way. So this is what I want to give a round of applause for. $400,000. So yes, as of Friday, and I think the pledges are flooding in. Jen just contacted me before. She's seeing everything come in online. That's as of Friday. So that's representing about 2/3 of our way to the financial target. We've heard from about 50% of households in our church. It's just wonderful. And including 11 new pledges. So thank you for our new, yes. Thank you for friends and members who are new to our community. This is just the lifeblood of our kind of the financial part of our church. So we want to celebrate. So after service, we heard we're going to have a nice, as we always do, social hour. Today, it's extra special because we're having a celebration of South Church. So you should see the amount of baked goods, including some gluten-free, because I am gluten-free, so I see everyone who's gluten-free. I hear some laughing. For kids, there's going to be a donut eating race on a string, which will be fun. And for adults, if you haven't yet pledged, please consider doing so, because you will be entered into a raffle that will be happening at the event. You can find the QR code to pledge in your order of service, and we will make sure that if you pledge during service or you come see me at the table just at the bottom of the stairs. What is this? Is this your pledge? Perfect. Wonderful. You're in. You're in.
I think it's today, yeah. The ABC isn't sad, they have a new way. They've got a ticket to win. I've got a ticket to win. You've got a ticket to win, because we care. Count your pledge for me and bring it on down. Yeah.
If you are watching remotely, I invite you to light your own candle. As Reverend Allen lights the chalice in the sanctuary, we share this reading by Katie Romano Griffin. Come, let us enter the space of hope and community. Come, let us enter the space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion and compassion. Come, let us enter the space with the stories of our ancestors, with their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into the space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into the space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into the space and let us worship. Now please rise and join us in reciting our mission statement that is printed in your order of service. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community, and we celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. Please be seated. So personally, I think of technology as a miracle that I refuse to take for granted. Just yesterday, I decided to take a picture of a rose that opened up in my yard and send it to my sister-in-law in Moscow. A few minutes later, she sent me several pictures of my nieces and nephews and their kids. They happened to be all together at that time. It happened within the span of 3 minutes. How cool is that? Compare it to me in 1992, when I first came to the United States. I could afford to call my parents only once a month because the cost of international call was $5 a minute. We would write each other letters by hand that would take 4 to 6 weeks to get to the destination. So for today's service, Reverend Allen asked me to think of a time when I thought technology would be a help, but where I ultimately ended up needing to trust my intuition. So here's the story. It all began when I decided to take a solo hiking trip into the forest that surrounded my town. Equipped with the latest GPS device and a high-end smartphone and a trusty satellite phone, I felt invincible. With these gadgets in my backpack, I ventured into the wilderness with the confidence that I could conquer any obstacle. For the first few hours, technology was indeed my faithful companion. The GPS guided me through the winding trails, and my smartphone provided entertainment during my snack breaks in the wilderness. But in the afternoon, disaster struck. My GPS device malfunctioned, displaying erratic readings and eventually shutting down completely. Panic set in, and I reached for my satellite phone to call for help. Yet when I attempted to dial, it refused to connect to the satellite network. My heart sank, and I realized I was truly on my own. Desperation turned to determination, and I forced myself to rely on the most essential tool I had, my instincts. With the sun as my compass and moss and trees as a makeshift map, I began to navigate my way through the forest. It was slow progress, fraught with uncertainty, but gradually I found myself honing the skills that my dependence on technology had dulled. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a familiar trail that led me back to civilization. I emerged from a forest a changed person with a newfound appreciation for the balance between technology and human intuition. While technology had its place, I realized that sometimes the answers we seek can only be found by trusting ourselves and our own evolving knowledge. Did you like my story? It has a secret. It is not my story. ChatGPT created it in 3 seconds. I wanted to showcase, I wanted to share it to showcase the creativity and productivity that technology and AI can provide. All I wrote in the prompt was, write a 300-word story in first person in which you thought technology would be a help, but where you ultimately ended up needing to trust your intuition. 3 seconds. ChatGPT did it. The only thing ChatGPT did not know was me. I do not like hiking. And I would never go in the woods alone. While I appreciate the utility of technology in enhancing productivity and facilitating communication, I do hold a deeper affection for genuine connections with fellow humans who know to invite me to the movies or a theater play instead of the dark woods. Now please rise as you are able and join me in singing hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small.
I'd love to invite anyone who would like to hear a story from a little closer up. It was not written by ChatGPT. I wrote it myself. Took more than 3 minutes, but I evolved as a person in the process. And this is actually not a story about technology so much as like a different kind of progress, because some of our young people are not yet living in a world of high tech. And there's layers to the lessons of today. So, once upon a time, there was this kid named M. And much like many of the kids, in fact, I can't think of any exceptions, for every kid that I've ever met, M was awesome. They were funny and creative and curious about the world. And M had a really great family who were messy and kind of goofy, and they kind of bugged each other sometimes, and they were all doing their very best to be their best person in the world, which was never perfect and was always changing and was just right. And as M was growing up, things started happening in their life. When they turned 5 years old, they went to kindergarten. And at kindergarten, they met a friend who invited them to come play soccer on the weekend. And Em went to play soccer, which was really fun. And they said, that was awesome. And after the game, the soccer coach came up to Em's parents and gave them the schedule and said, welcome to the team. And they went home and they were so excited. And they had in their kitchen a chalkboard, this great big chalkboard. And Em was a pretty amazing artist, really good at drawing things. And Em had for years already been painting giant murals on the chalkboard every week. And Em's parents would join them. And as Em made a giant picture with chalk, their parents would put like little shapes, maybe a balloon, and they'd write something in it like, go to grandma's on Saturday, or a little star that said, don't forget a dentist appointment Tuesday morning, or maybe there was a gigantic circle that said, party at church after worship on Sunday. And Em was just always loved making the art. And so mom or dad would put the events on the board, and Em would put colors around it and blend it in and make it into a gigantic picture. So they came home from soccer this day, and they had in their hand the soccer schedule. And so they made a little space on the board, and they put a big star, and it said soccer, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And then they made the rest of their picture. They put their other reminders up on the chalkboard. And that's how life went. And over time, more things came up. Em found out about skiing, and they learned how to ski. And so there were little reminders about trips to go skiing. And Em started taking piano lessons, and there were little reminders about piano lessons. Over time, there were so many different things, they started kind of getting busy. And they didn't always have time to make a new mural each Saturday. They started sticking the papers just kind of up on the chalkboard. And after a while, the chalkboard got so full of papers that there wasn't really much room for coloring anymore. And Em kind of noticed, and they sort of went about their business. And one day, Em's parents came home from the store, and they said, we found something. This is going to make our lives so much better. And they unrolled this big paper thing that went right over the chalkboard, and it was colorful. It had swirling colors, it had some pictures, and it had spaces for reminders and places to put paper. And Em noticed and felt a little bit sad, but also understood this made sense. And they sat down and had their snack, and that night they went to sleep. And while they were trying to sleep, they were kind of tossing and turning and sort of struggling to get to sleep. They heard music downstairs. And they listened for a little while. Now, Em's parents had noticed Em's face when they put up that big paper over the chalkboard. And Em was hearing some music, and they heard some laughter. And Em went downstairs to the kitchen, and there were Em's parents in the kitchen, and they had taken the whole blackboard down, all the stuff off the chalkboard. The little paper organizer was rolled up in the corner, and on the table were all of the different papers and reminders and permission slips and things in their lives. And in the chalkboard, there was just one star. And Em's parents turned around and saw Em and said, we were going to surprise you in the morning. And when Em looked at the star, all it said was, don't forget to color. And Em got a really big smile on their face. And they grabbed their chalk and they started coloring. And as they were coloring with their parents, they started talking about all the wonderful things in their life. They talked about all the different activities that they loved doing. And they also talked about how busy they were feeling. And as they put things up on the chalkboard, they decided a few things maybe they wouldn't put back up on the chalkboard. And they left right in the center that star that said, don't forget to color. And when they were finished, that mural was kind of messy and sort of imperfect and a little bit goofy looking, and it was just right. And that's our story for today. And if you would like to follow me and come downstairs, I would be happy to take you there.
Each week at the offertory, we each give of what we are able to support South Church, the building, staff, congregants, and the greater community. In an effort coordinated by the Social Justice Associates, each month we share that collection with a different nonprofit organization. During the month of October, our collection will be shared with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The UUSC is a non-sectarian organization committed to advancing human rights together with the international community of grassroots partners and advocates. Their work focuses on intersecting roots of injustice to defend rights at risk due to criminalization and systemic oppression of people based on their identity. The offering will now be gratefully received.
let us gather our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer or reflection. I'd like to begin our time of community prayer and meditation by recognizing the humanitarian trauma that is continuing to unfold in the Middle East. And I invite us to particularly hold our Jewish and Muslim neighbors and friends, those we know and those we don't. Can we breathe with them for a moment? What this must be like. So many connections, complications, threats, and fears, and the ache. I invite us to breathe with them, or if it's you, with yourself. I invite us to breathe for this tragedy and for so many tragedies that are raging and dragging on in unbearable, unconscionable ways. I invite us to take in these words adapted from Reverend David Miller. In the midst of crisis, where can we find humanity? In the midst of pain, how can we provide comfort? In the midst of conflict, how can we center reconciliation? In the midst of religion, with whom can we practice love? In the midst of a suffering world, let us create beauty. In the midst of what's broken, let us promise compassion. In the midst of the present, let us work for the future. In the midst of the other, let us see the divine. Amen. Bringing our hearts to this time and to each other and all that is in our world, I invite you in a moment to light a candle, a symbol of a spirit within and among us. Or I invite you to simply take in the music, the movement, the candles in a time of personal meditation. Please remember that if you are going through a difficult time, I am available. Kirsten is available. Our pastoral associates are available. If you need any one of us, please fill out a card in your pew, or you can call or email us, or just come find me after the service. May the flames we kindle, that we witness, may they guide us, lift us, and offer light to all of us as we light these outer symbols of an inner connection to that which matters most today. last week, I was mulling over this topic of artificial intelligence and how it intersects with human life when Kirsten happened to share a story with me. It was about some friends of hers and their Roomba vacuum cleaner. I've always been intrigued and maybe a little jealous of people who have these little home-based robots because, number one, they're cool, and number two, when you have one, you do not need to vacuum anymore. These little round AI-driven self-propelled appliances can be programmed for any time of the day you want, and then they just slide their way around the floor, up and down, around, under, vacuuming everything in their path, even those spots under couches and chairs that are hard to get to. I love the idea of time-saving AI. So anyway, Kirsten's friends were not home one day when their beloved pup happened to do its business on the living room floor. There was unfortunately no one around with a little baggie to pick that up, but the Roomba was around and tried at the appropriate time to pick that up. It unfortunately wasn't able to vacuum this sticky substance particularly well. What it did do well was to diligently slide along the floor, substance in tow, cleaning up and down, under and around everything, spots that are hard to get to under couches and chairs. And did I mention they go from room to room? Dining room, kitchen, living room, bonus room. There's always a bonus room. Time-saving AI is great, but I don't know how long it took them to clean that up. And by the way, no, ChatGPT did not write that story. It does not have a sense of humor. But that is just one story, and I don't want to oversimplify artificial intelligence through the lens of one appliance that happens to be oblivious to the realities of owning a dog. There is more to it than that, some of which is, as Anna implied, pretty amazing. You heard those opening words, and I mean, aside from the fact that it didn't know her very well, it wrote a pretty nice piece. And if you've been following the news, you may have seen that AI large language models like ChatGPT are outperforming not just chess players, but human doctors, lawyers, and radiologists. Passing the bar exam in the 90th percentile, they are more accurate than the majority of radiologists at reading MRIs, and are diagnosing heart disease better than cardiologists, apparently. Some say it is a part of the answer to climate change, and as far as robots go, what they don't know how to do yet, they are learning at an almost exponential pace. Of course, if you have been following the news, you also know that AI is not all sunshine and roses. More than one pundit is sounding the alarm. This technology has been taking in countless pieces of data, books, articles, web pages, and creating new content that is bypassing copyright for countless writers, musicians, artists. There's the dilemma for student essays. How will they learn to think and write if a chat bot can write every school assignment for them at the click of a button in about 3 seconds? And people are already seeing how our societal biases are amplified by these tools, exacerbating problems we already have with racism, sexism, ableism, and so on. And what about our jobs, radiologists and cardiologists out there? Will there be massive unemployment as artificial intelligence will do most or all of our jobs better than any of us can? In thinking about all this and the different perspectives and possibilities and fears, one author particularly caught my attention. Yuval Noah Harari, best-selling author of *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus*, who's not nearly as concerned about essays, jobs, and bias, as with the fundamental way this new technology intersects with our vulnerabilities in our human hardware, in particular, with our capacity for intimacy. Last year, Blake Lemoine, a Google engineer, publicly claimed that the AI chatbot Lambda, on which he was working, had become sentient, had grown a soul, so to speak. He wanted to protect it, treat it as we do human subjects, ask it for consent. His controversial claim about the nature of this software agent cost him his job. But the most interesting thing about this episode, Harari writes, was not Mr. Lemoine's claim itself, which was probably false. Rather, it was his willingness to risk his lucrative job for the sake of an AI chatbot. If AI can influence people to risk their jobs for it, he writes, what else could it induce them to do? Harari wonders what will happen to human society and human psychology as AI fights AI in a battle to fake intimate relationships with us, which can then be used to convince us to vote for particular politicians or buy particular products. I love some of the expressions on your faces right now. Even without creating fake intimacy, the new AI tools would have an immense influence on our opinions and worldviews, he continues. People may come to use a single AI advisor as a one-stop, all-knowing oracle. A death knell for search engines, newspapers, and the advertising industry, he writes. Why bother searching, reading a paper, or reading product reviews when I can just ask the oracle? The question becomes, I will add, who's programming this oracle? Who is setting its terms, its directions, its boundaries, and its limits? And with what intent? So, on the one hand, you have this incredible capacity of AI to make life better. Even if it eliminates jobs, some say AI will make so obvious the need for a universal basic income that we'll finally have more time to live our purpose, to become our whole, creative, fully actualized selves. On the other hand, those with power and ill intentions could leverage this technology not just in crime and war, but to control and manipulate us in politics or in advertising, creating ever more compelling ways to pull us in and keep us there. Now, I want to step back for a moment because it is easy at this point to go down the rabbit hole of questions, anxieties, and fears about an unknown future, or fantasies of amazing potential. I want to step back from the countless things we cannot know or control right now and hone in on the few things that we can. What we can see or do or understand now. First, practically, as Anna said to me when we were talking about this, AI won't take your job, but people who know how to use it might. So, go ahead and learn how to use it. It is a useful and amazing tool. And learn about it so that you can vote intelligently about the risks, the threats, and where we need to set the limits. But second, more personally, more interpersonally, more communally, I see this technology is a mirror for us as humans that can show us where we're stuck. It is reflecting us back to us. After all, we're the ones who created it. In part, we humans created it to make things better and easier, which is great. And I wonder to what extent it has grown out of our cultural drive for always more, always better, never enough. How does this tool reinforce ways we feel we should be better, that we should do more, look smarter than we naturally are? Thinking about our story for all ages, how can we sidestep that pressure for more? How can we stay in touch with our inner chalkboard artist, create that time and space for the still small voice it represents? And then there is all that this technology is taking in, everything it's training on, all that data it is vacuuming up about us. That is us. These AI models are pulling in the fullness of our human heritage. I just think about what's on the internet, the wisdom of the Dalai Lama, right alongside your posts asking how to use your new leaf blower, alongside QAnon conspiracy theories and your favorite kitten videos and Hezbollah recruitment materials and Van Gogh's Starry Night and Edvard Munch's Silent Scream. That's us, all of it. These tools are humanity's brainchild, and they are its reflection. I'm not that surprised that Lemoyne fell for his Lambda bot. After all, we are in a loneliness epidemic. Humans are hardwired for intimacy, and intimacy with other humans is hard. There's this pressure to look or be a certain way, and in that shadow of the catastrophe of all of us, it can be hard to trust each other, to be present, to show who we are, to really connect. Who wouldn't be drawn to an endlessly patient, brilliantly creative bot who is always respectful and kind to us? And yet, after a while, I think something will feel like it's missing. Not to mention how this would reinforce whatever isolation is already rampant in our culture. But did I mention intimacy with humans is hard? I wonder how it is for you. Here's something about how it is for me. Someone, a member of the congregation, said to me the other day, "I loved your sermon, but I'd love to know you better. I'd love to hear more about who you are and what you really think," which was touching and compelling, and it made this introvert just a little nervous. This whole topic came up in a feedback project I did over the summer, too. In addition to some very kind and lovely things people said, more than one person also said, "I can come across as guarded, a little wary. It can be hard to see me." And I thought, yes, I can see that in myself, but how did you know? I have been trying so hard to guard you from my guardedness. I don't know why it's not working. But then, as I was processing all this for the sermon, I thought, well, how could you not be a little guarded? I mean, all that stuff on the internet, all that intrigue, that betrayal, that manipulation, that's who humans are. I have definitely had my share of people treating me with less than kindness, consideration, and endless patience. So I was thinking, doesn't it make sense to be a little wary? But then, just this past Friday, something a spiritual leader said reminded me I'm in the mix here. I am part of the picture, and perhaps sometimes in the past I set things up awarely or unawarely to go the way they did, where addiction, confusion, or my own ego got me tangled up. Times I tried to control or manipulate someone else or held on to an opinion long after I should have let it go. Times I thought that I or they should be more like this or that, whatever image I had in my mind, none of which does much to build up relationship. And then there were times I didn't speak up about something I needed or something I wanted, or didn't set a boundary that would have been good for me. Adrienne Marie Brown writes that healthy boundaries are what allows me to love you and me at the same time. But even as my inner perfectionist wants to perfectly stop being a perfectionist, even as I try to stop trying so hard all the time, even as I think about how to stop guarding my guardedness, a line from one person's feedback form comes to mind. What if I could share more of myself to grow closer to those around me? And what if I could trust those around me to know that I am cared for and appreciated deeply? And then I exhale. What if I could trust? What if any of us could trust? Trust that we are cared for and appreciated. I will tell you that any one of you who's ever shared something personal with me, I appreciate that so much. And I hope you know that. And if we knew that we could trust, what would we see and what would we know then? I want to end with a story I heard this week about Susan Sprung, who painted the new portrait of Michelle Obama, now hanging in the White House. When Sprung was being interviewed for the job, she brought some printed talking points, but the Obamas were not interested in her prepared speech. Instead, one of the interviewers asked her, "Why do you paint?" Susan Sprung had never been asked that before. But the question hit deep within, and all of a sudden, she started to cry. And she answered from the heart. She shared that her father had died when she was a little girl, and there were no photographs. She had nothing left but her own memories of his face. Remembering his face and the faces of others became a value embedded in her being. And that is why she became a portrait painter. And she was chosen to paint Michelle Obama's portrait. After her painting was unveiled, the interviewer said to Sprung that painting Michelle Obama must be so special, because Michelle Obama is such a special person, present, contained, poised, graceful, beautiful. Surely painting such a person is unusually rewarding. No, said Susan Sprung, almost everyone is like that. You find when you start painting them, you fall in love with them. My wish for myself, for any of us, is that we come back from fantasies of better and more, from pressure and threat and from fears of the future, and come back to this moment, to yourself, to now, to us. To this instant that separates past from future, and the new story that always begins now. There are so many ways to let go of old habits and practice living from the heart. May we practice together, strengthen ourselves and this community in the dance of possibilities. Amen. And let us sing our closing hymn, number 311. Let it be a dance. Please rise in body or in spirit.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
In the face of the unknowns which frighten us, in connection with our hearts that sustain us, may we reach out to one another, be present to each other, dance with one another in the ever-present now, trusting in what we create as we go. Amen.
ticket to win again, are you?